What are you trying to do, front hair?
Hey,
Did all right.
nice shirt.
A non-working microphone over there.
Bruce, you ready?
Take a deep breath.
Okay, good evening. It's time to begin the September Planning Commission meeting. First item on the agenda is application 2433Z. Brian Remington, owner, 1118 Rehoboth Road, approximately 26.32 acres, located in land lot 244, the second land district. The applicant is requesting to rezone from R4 single family to R6 planned residential community. We have someone here to speak for that. Please state your name and address for the record.
Harvey Pilkington, 1014 Waverly Drive, Griffin.
All right, tell us a little bit about what you're planning.
Okay,
here.
we want to rezone it to a R6 so we can put condo development, 80 units on there. It's got water and sewer. It's kind of surrounded by Development Authority, owns the land on all sides of it except for the one end of it down there. And went and talked to David Lucky, and he was in support of it. He has a residential development conceptual plan across the street from it within his zoning, and he was in support of it, so don't think that I would have any opposition to it. And we think we have a well-designed complex. It's going to have sidewalks on both sides of the road. They meet in the zoning of 1,250 square foot per unit, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. They got cathedral ceilings. They're really nice brick fronts and sided yards. And we're going to have a really strict homeowners association in there. Be enforced by the officers of the HOA. Fenced in privacy fences around each yard and a covered back patio. 2-car parking per unit. Of course, we're going to meet some other overflow parking with the zoning requirements within the complex if they need company or something, so they won't be parking in the streets. We're going to have a clubhouse, amenities. We're going to have a clubhouse, a pickleball court, a walking trail, and a dog park. We think it's going to be really nice, a nice brick entrance, and along the front, we're going to build a nice wooden fence and landscape the whole frontage of the road on Rehoboth Road. And our Stephanie Wyndham is adapting the homeowner association bylaws to address, you can't roof just one half of a building. You have to roof the entire building. So we are adding some language in the homeowner association that it'll be, let's see right here what she calls it. Common elements. The roof will be considered common elements and be monitored by the homeowner association.
Okay. All right.
That's pretty much, we think we have a well-designed subdivision, and we targeted the employees from the Development Authority there, and maybe some of the executives have shown interest in possibly owning one for their executives. And trying to keep the price to where, first-time home buyers and seniors can live there. Maybe seniors that won't, we're going to keep the grasses cut and keep it well-maintained, that can't afford Sun City can live in this complex. And we've had a lot of success with that in another development, and think there's a good need for that.
All right. Do you have any questions up here, Commissioner?
I have a concern about the traffic on Rehoboth Road, and the fact that your entrance is aligned with another road. That's excellent planning, but I don't see any plans for deceleration or acceleration in and out of the complex. Is that something you've considered?
Well, I have a representative from Paragon here with me. He can address that technicality for you.
Can you come up? Can't hear you.
Yes, ma'am. There's a decel lane shown on the conceptual plan.
We need your name and.
Robert King, represented with Paragon Consulting Group. There is a decel lane shown here. It is 459.65 feet long on there. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry. I did not
We need
notice
your-
that.
No
We
worries.
need your address as
Oh.
well.
I work at 350 Airport Road.
The concept plan, the plan at the scale that I'm looking at it, I couldn't tell that that was.
No worries, understand. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I had a question, Harvey. I was curious. I thought with the initial discussions that we talked about that this was kind of going to be a condo type thing where you guys took care of the outside area.
That's exactly right. It'll be like 2 units, and you could own one half and I could own the other half, so that it meets the legal definition of a condo with the firewall. And we are, the homeowner association will maintain all the grounds and the common areas and the frontage. And that's why we're adding the roof, can't just roof half of a building to the common element.
Okay, so is that the same situation you have at Summerwood, or is that
It
different?
is. No, the roof is not in Summerwoods. We're adding
Yeah, I
that.
realize that, but as far as the way expenses are handled, and
That's right, yes.
it's all through the homeowners association?
Yes. Be dues each month, monthly dues, paid for the grass cutting and all the maintenance.
Okay. What percentage of people do you have renting at Summerwood?
You know, I'm talking about the complex right beside the fire department.
Right, so-
And with the brick fronts. And I don't know the percentage. I'd be afraid to answer that exactness of that. But there are a lot of seniors that live in there, widowed ladies and all that really like that concept of living, and, you know, and they can't afford Sun City. So I would say a high percentage of it is elderly, but I don't know how many units.
You don't know if they're renting or not?
Oh, no, they are all owners.
They are all owners.
They are owners, yes. But there are some rental units in there.
Okay. All right, that's all I had. Anybody else from up front here?
Not this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll might call you back up. This time, we'll go ahead and have our staff report, and then we do have a few people signed up. After the staff report, we'll call you up and hear from you.
Okay, thank you. So just as the applicant said, 26.32 acres going from R4 to R6 for 80 condo-style lots with common areas and amenities. Typical lot size from the plan is calculated at 3,840 square feet for a typical lot size with a 40-foot width. As the applicant said, there are no garages on the units themselves. The parking will be outside. This is to maximize the lot yield for that width, to not have the garage have to be added to that lot width. You can see from the large plan you were provided, the amenities also provided, the walking trail, the pickleball courts, the clubhouse area. So we have that. In terms of fitting in with the future land use map, the area right there where it's at is actually designated an employment area. Obviously for certain businesses to promote employment within the county. However, with it being R4 now, it could have been developed as an R4 residential property, obviously, regardless of the land use designation. And the applicant did indicate possibly a target of some first-time home buyers in here, and possibly some even workforce housing for somebody that works at Caterpillar or something like that could own a house here close by. So in staff's opinion, that does align with the employment land use category that it's in with the future land use map. Staff does not consider that an issue. Then also went into some of the highlights of the R6 zoning itself tonight, which I think we need to discuss, particularly architectural. There are some limits in there on rental, 20% rental max. So there's some things like that that need to be discussed tonight as well. You were provided in your packets, in the original application, there was a rendering of the outside of the units, and then you were provided the floor plan and another elevation of them as well to look at. You know, approval, if this rezoning is recommended for approval, it does not necessarily convey that you're also approving the architecture unless you just state that. So that needs to be clarified as well, what exactly you might be recommending for approval or denial tonight. So I just bring that up as well. I will cover the variances as we get them in the next couple of items, but that is all I have to say right now about the rezoning.
All right, well, I tell you what, let's, in the packet on page 18, it has the conditions spelled out. And the number one thing there that he's got is the architectural standards. Did everybody get a chance to look at what's proposed as far as what the units are gonna look like and so forth? Anybody unhappy about that?
Got a question on that illustration of the house. Does it have a carport or not? I don't mean a garage, I mean a carport. Okay, that particular illustration appeared to be a one-car carport. Just FYI. Thank you.
So Harvey, if I understand it correctly from your description that you gave from the podium up here, it's basically gonna look like summer wood. Okay. So there is a picture in the packet there that shows one of the summer wood houses, its color, so forth.
Maybe.
Is that before the numbered pages, or is it after the numbered pages?
It's like, I'm trying to find the next numbered page in the.
Forties.
No, it's not that far. It's,
They got a lot of duplicates.
yeah.
Is it the one
It's
that's
about
color?
that far in.
Okay. Is it,
It's,
is it color rendering?
Yeah, it is.
Rendering?
It's a photograph.
Okay,
It is a photograph.
about 22, 23.
This right here.
there we go.
Oh, we got it.
Okay. I would, just looking at that picture, I would hope that there would be some landscaping, have a little,
We landscape in front of each building and side yards.
that you might want to think about getting a better picture that would show a little aesthetics than that one that you have in your applicant.
So I'll defer to David on this. What is the style that you would call that if we're gonna condition it?
Not sure it has a label.
American contemporary?
Perhaps, yeah. I think I put in your packet the R6 architectural standards. Calls for quite a bit of architectural detail and variation. There again, you know, are you just talking about the rezoning tonight or the actual design of the elements? That's one thing y'all need to clarify, but, you know, it talks about different columns, window treatments, some variation in the front of the building, certain things like that that are pretty detailed in the architectural requirements for R6 that need to be, make sure the final exterior product reflects most or all of those. Decorative vents, gables, there, again, some of these are for, two-story things, but there are some fairly specific details in there in section L of that code, which,
Sure.
What page are you on in the packet?
17.
is it 17?
16 or 17, 16 and 17.
Right.
Well, actually, it goes back further than that, I'm sorry. Starts on 15,
Okay,
the design standards.
all right.
There again, you have suitability of the rezoning, you have circulation, then you have issues of architecture, so I don't know how y'all wanna, if you wanna deconstruct that and the one definite advantage you would have of rezoning from R4 is, the R4 doesn't have quite the architectural standards of an R6, so if somebody were to go out there and build outright permitted stuff now, it would not necessarily have to adhere to this R6 standard, so.
You got a suggestion on this?
Well, I was gonna kind of wait and hear what the other public wanted to, had to say, and then I've got a couple of little points, but. sit down and see.
Okay, that's a good idea. Let's go ahead and hear from the people that have signed up, and we'll proceed from there.
For this application, Mr. Chair, we have two signed up. Bill Jones, if you would please step forward and state your name and your address for the record, please.
My name's Bill Jones. I live at 118 Maplewood Drive, Griffin.
Please go ahead.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'm representing Dr. Remington that owns this property. We've had it for sale for several months now. We've had some opportunities to sell it before. This has been the best that we've had. This has been the best project that we have looked at. Dr. Remington has turned down other projects that have come before us. We have an in-town builder that's a quality builder that lives here, that's part of the community, that cares for the community, that's building here in our community. And you couldn't ask for a better builder that's looking out for the community. I personally met with David Lucky, went over this at length with him. He is very much in favor of something like this for this particular property. It is so much better having one driveway with the interior development than 20 or 30 driveways coming off Rehoboth Road. You're talking about traffic, you're talking about problems, you're talking about uncontrolled entrance, no decel lane, no anything. If you have 20 or 30 driveways, you have mayhem out there coming off of Rehoboth. This is designed and developed. Everybody knows Paragon, everybody knows they're doing it right. The I's dotted, the T's are crossed. This is by far the best development you could get out there. It's a better-looking project, too. I mean, they're not big houses, but not everybody can afford a $400,000 or $500,000 house. Like Mr. Pilkington mentioned, not everybody can go to Sun City and pay $495 for a two-bedroom house. These are gonna be in the neighborhood of $225 to $245, up to $300. This is gonna be a more moderate price. This is not low end, even though it looks like Summerwood, and Summerwood started at $70,000, $80,000. These are gonna be north of $225 to $245, up towards $300. This is a much better product. This is the best possible case scenario, I feel like, for the neighborhood. Now, in full disclosure, I am in real estate and do sell, and may have an opportunity to sell one in a year or 2 or 3 if I'm still selling, but it is a great project. It is a great developer, and I think this is an asset for Spalding County and the neighborhood. If there happened to be a kid there, they could walk to Rehoboth Road School. This is a good area for this product. I'll be glad to answer any questions. Or just sit down,
I think we're good right now.
okay?
Gadsden Woodall.
I'm not here to speak on behalf of that property. We have an agenda item, I think, the last,
Okay, because you'd signed up for that specific property, so.
no, sir.
All right, thank you much. Mr. Chair, that's all that have signed up.
Okay. All right, guys. Back to the drawing board here.
Mr. Harvey, would you mind, I just got a couple of questions that were noted in here that I had. First off, in the report, it talked about, within the amenities and stuff, in the layout, it talked about it, under amenities, lighting, and other design, item number 2, it said, a pool and tennis court area which shall be enclosed by decorative fencing. Again, I know you're doing the pickleball in lieu of, I guess, the tennis courts, but was the dog area supplied in lieu of the pool, or was a pool planned in the future?
No, it's
or
no,
what? Okay.
we rest down the street from the public swimming pool now.
Yeah, you're real close to it,
Yeah.
hasn't been there.
So we don't plan to put a pool, but we do
Okay.
have a nice fenced-in walk area for the dogs to be within the fence. And then a walking trail that goes down in the woods for the people to walk on. And the sidewalks on both sides of the street.
All right. Well, like I say, that was just noted in there, so that was a question I had. The other slight concern that I had, and I think that this is a product that is needed. I think that is something that is a good area for it out there, and is something that we certainly could use here in the county. But one of the items that kind of stood out to me while looking, and I don't know if that goes back to what Mr. Harris was mentioning there a while ago. He was thinking it was a carport or something, but on there, on those spacing, and I don't know, I've got an older copy of the zoning ordinances and the R6 and all, but is there any depth requirement on the parking areas? I know there's several of these that have 24-foot space, width and stuff like that, but my only concern, I was just looking at the way the sidewalks, like you mentioned earlier, which is a good thing, you got sidewalks that go all the way on both sides of the road and goes through the development, but if when you're walking down the sidewalk and you don't have much room in between these places, but every time you run into a vehicle and have to get out in the road almost to get around it, it's a little bit of an issue. And it looked like it was quite tight there, that spacing.
Yeah. We'll look at the dimensions of those parking pads and try to make sure that the vehicle has room to get off the sidewalk. And we will address the upgrading the landscaping in front of the units.
Because again, going back to the picture that y'all had in there, I guess, of Summerwood, it looked like there, on that one, you had a larger space between the back of curb and the sidewalk than what you're showing over here on the new development. It looks like it's only maybe a couple of feet.
4 foot, I think.
Okay. And then it was 4-foot sidewalks up there. Okay. So anyway, that was a little bit of a concern. Again, I know this is something you can handle, and I appreciate the fact of having a very strong homeowners association. I also know that we've had issues with other homeowners association that we thought we're gonna start off good, and, you know, it really, at the end of the day, falls into who's kind of running it and if they're gonna keep it in place. And, again, I've been through the property over there off of Carver, and it certainly, it still looks good in comparison
It's
to a lot
well
of places.
kept, yeah.
But one of the concerns and stuff that, that I do see around several of our other communities where we have allowed fencing and providing the fencing and stuff is that the fencing kind of falls into disrepair and it looks a little rough around the edges and stuff like that. But is the fencing something that would also be
It's
addressed
all
and taken care of by
within the homeowner
homeowners?
association, all the common elements, which is all the walking trails and the pickleball courts, all the common areas, and the clubhouse, will all be monitored and inspected by the homeowners association. And it'd be dues, we don't know exactly, but somewhere around $70 a month per unit dues to upgrade that. And there'll be officers elected within the residents to be members of the homeowner association.
Okay.
So they'll have concerns that impact them.
Okay, because I know luckily the, you know, some of your landscaping along the roadway and stuff there will help to block some of it, but it does get awfully unsightly when you have broken boards.
It
and,
does.
You know, areas and stuff that look like they're in disrepair. So that's been one of our concerns and something that's kind of a little bit of a pet peeve, you know, in seeing those kind of areas out there. So I just wanted to mention that. Otherwise, I thought that, you know, the other limitations and stuff, of course, they come right out of the zoning and under what the staff put down, so I thought all that looked good. That's all I had.
Okay, I have a question, if you don't mind. The brick facade on the front, that's self-evident. Are you gonna try to use vinyl siding going around it?
No, we plan to use, as far as the architecture, we're gonna do the brick on the front, and we're gonna put the jack arches on, over the windows where brick is sloping, and hardy board.
Okay. All right.
Harvey, if I could sort of segue on a little bit on what Bruce was talking about, we've run into some really bad situations depending on the homeowners association. We had this whole deal over on Jewel Drive and that thing dragged out. Homeowners couldn't do anything about something that was going on. The county can't enforce the homeowners' regulations. And that's always gonna be in the back of our head when the provisions that we condition it with don't have any way to be enforced.
Well, I submitted the homeowner association bylaws, which addresses 90% of everything we've talked about, other than the roof, which we are gonna add. Stephanie Wyndham has already adopted written a clause to add to that homeowner association, but if you ride through the area, the homeowner association with the brick fronts, I think it's a different association on this side beside the fire department with the bricks than across the street. And it's well maintained, and it's a strict homeowner association.
How many homes do you have to have before the homeowners association takes effect?
Well, I don't know that exactly, but as soon as possible, because it's the declarant responsibility until that point, which would be me.
If you reviewed the staff recommendations and the conditions that they have recommended in addition to the standards of the law,
I didn't understand.
the staff has made recommendations to approve with 6 additional comments.
No, I
That they-
hadn't seen that.
Okay.
Can we put that on the screen right
Would you like for me to read them out for the record, or?
there? Yeah.
Sure, I mean,
Sure it won't
I'm
hurt,
sure
but
he would like to hear
It'd be
them.
good to sit on the screen.
All right.
Page 18.
Recommendation for approval of the rezoning, should the Board of Commissioners choose to the planning commission choose to approve the application, following minimum approval conditions shall apply. Number one, all architectural standards of sections 1105A and 1106A of R6 zoning shall be complied with prior to issuance of building permits. Number two, all landscaping standards shall be complied with prior to issuances of certificates of occupancy. Number three, all amenities shall be installed prior to certificates of occupancy. Number four, street naming shall be in accordance with county regulations. Number five, requirements of Chapter 6 streetlight district shall apply. And 6, 20% rental maximum shall apply. Now, that is directly from the R6 code, the rental maximum. So,
Yes, ma'am, I was aware of that.
Thank you.
Okay, so the other bit of housekeeping is what we're gonna call the architectural style that the director had asked for us to address. If we do nothing but say we accept it with the brick veneer and hardy plank siding and so forth.
John, the architectural requirements are already set out in the code in R6.
Yeah, but you gotta specify which one you're gonna do.
well, the approval condition says all. So, I mean, certain one of these perhaps may not apply, like a bay window or something, but, you know, some of these are going, especially in section L here, are gonna have to be, L4 are gonna have to be included for sure. It can be finalized between now and the Board of Commissioners, but, it's gonna, I'm not saying y'all have to account for every single architectural detail, but, yeah.
Again, just to clarify, under your L over there, I'm looking at an older copy, but L1, do you have a A, B, and a C there?
Yes.
And what does B say?
Minimum 3-side brick, stone, stucco.
Right.
These haven't changed since
Right.
R6 was adopted.
But that's what I'm referring to, that those requirements are a minimum of 3 sides,
Correct.
and not 1 side in hardy plank. Are you aware of that, Harv?
No, we would prefer to bill them as we presented them, but, you know, anything, those things, when we add them to it, it just adds so much to the cost of the sales price that we're trying to do a good product and keep the price down to where they're sellable at the same time.
Okay. Again, that is part of section 1105A, which is spelled out here in the zoning ordinance, so that y'all might have to go back and look at and what's doing, because you would have to, there'd have to be a variance to change that up, wouldn't it?
That's correct.
So,
And there are some variances pending that David has not yet discussed.
right, but that's not one of them.
Well, we tried to pick the zoning after meeting with the planning and zoning lady at the time that best fit
Yeah,
with the least amount of variances to it, and this R6 was the best fit.
yeah. And I still think for what you're trying to do, that is your best one, but we just need to make sure that, you know, again, we're following what's there for the R6.
So zoning wise, just to get back to just general use, it does, the density aligns with the standards. It does not conflict, I believe, with the future land use map or the general intent of the area. I think it could provide a certain, as the applicant said, a certain target service for homes. So in terms of those zoning issues, I think it complies. So you can definitely have to consider that right off the bat, whether the use is even suitable or not, before we get down into details of architecture and other design aspects.
Right. Okay.
Entertain a motion.
All right, is there any other discussion from up front? All right, I'll entertain a motion on 24-33Z.
That's just for the rezoning itself.
Just,
Correct.
yeah.
Right, I would move to approve that.
Have a second?
I'll second it, as long as staff recommendations and stuff are included in there.
Okay. Staff recommendations is spelled out on page 18 of the packet. Okay. Those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
All right, we've made it to item 2. Application 24-14VA, Brian Remington, owner, 118 Rehoboth Road, approximately 26.32 acres located in land lot 244 of the Second Land District. The applicant is requesting a variance to omit garage requirement and have no garage for each unit.
Do you want me to go ahead and?
Go ahead
Okay.
and give your staff report.
So in conjunction with the rezoning that was just heard, this is another aspect of that, and that is, of course, we've already talked about having 2 off-street parking spaces per unit and not garages or carports for these. So there is a requirement in R6 zoning for condominiums, rear entry garage required. That's part of the section 1105A we've already talked about. Now, you can read that one of 2 ways, and I think each one is valid. You could say that garages are required no matter what, and they must be rear entry, or you could read it, if you're gonna have a garage, it must be rear entry. So regardless, we don't have a garage, and it's definitely not gonna be a rear entry, so hence the need for a variance here. I understand the intent of R6 with that, having rear entry garages and not seeing the unsightliness of open garages. Maybe on a larger lot, or not larger tract, I think that could probably work. I know in my experience with some other places, particularly a townhome place I'm thinking of in Jonesboro, there was townhomes, there was rear entry garages, rear alleys to get to them. It was about the width of a driveway, because that's all they could do, and it was an absolute traffic nightmare. I think of some larger tracks that could certainly work, and certainly I've seen it work well in a place near Fayetteville and some places like that, but I'm not sure it would, practically speaking, would work here. And again, he's trying to, his goal is to increase his lot yield. All the garage is gonna do is add to the lot width and decrease that yield. So in going hand in hand with what he's trying to achieve, the garages are kind of an obstacle to that. So it's up to this board whether that's appropriate or not, but that is the reasoning behind the, first of all, garages in general, and then second of all, rear entry garages would pose some possible circulation problems. It would definitely increase also the impervious area you would have in the subdivision for having the street plus the alleys. So that's some factors you have to look into with regarding this variance.
Okay. Any discussion from up front here?
We've got an ordinance. And this has been pretty well laid out, thought out. And I know that the developer or the owner, wants as much lot yield as it could get. And I appreciate that. But at the same time, if you're gonna have an ordinance, why don't people propose a project that meets the ordinance?
Yep, I hear you.
Just a question.
If this,
Go ahead.
if we're going to have, along with Frank, next 4 days will be heavy rain. If you're gonna have retired people, talking senior women and things, and they have to get to the car for emergencies or whatever, they want to go outside in the rain, or should they not have, based on on the Spalding County ordinance, a garage to walk out into? I mean, if you're gonna have the ordinance, have the ordinance. If not, we look at each individual thing. I say for consistency's sake, we should have garages there.
Mary Lou, you got a thought?
I do have thoughts. I'd like to narrow them down to the point where I could articulate them. I am moved by the fact that we're looking at opportunities for people who can't afford housing as this being demonstrated in Spalding County right now. The new construction, this is something that gives people of a lesser income an opportunity. And I know the expense that it would involve in adding a garage to these structures that would be accessible and give the protection that we would want to give even the least of those, if you will. But I think that I'm moved to the fact that we would want to reach out and get better housing for our lower income people overwhelms that for me. That I feel that having an adequately placed hardscape that would act as a parking area takes away the mud, at least, that you would have to slop through just to get to your garage. Or the only thing that I would suggest is to make sure that those cars, and I know when you talk about cars or vehicles, you're talking about different depths. In Sun City, we have pickup trucks that are parked in the driveways that extend over the sidewalk, and that's not supposed to be allowed, but they're out there because of the size of the truck. And I don't know why that's not enforced, but I would really like to see a condition added to it that would talk about not blocking and the sidewalk and putting that in the homeowners association rules so that it could take effect and have some power behind it. But I'm comfortable with having a parking area that is impervious material that would be adequate for parking a vehicle, but I would look to add a condition so that it can be enforced that they don't block the sidewalk.
Bruce?
Okay, so again, going back to the code in section 1105A, it spells out paved off-street parking area must be provided for the use of residents. At least 2 spaces for each dwelling unit must be furnished, which is what I think Mr. Pilkington and them are doing. And then it also goes into other paved parking areas for guests and that are there. It has to be done at point 2 paved guest parking spaces per dwelling unit, and all that calculations are shown there. So, I mean, I think they cover the bases. Again, if we want, I think that developers should have a little bit of leeway in what they do there. And I think going back to what I recall in the past, when we were trying to deal with some of these, we talked about the rear opening garages and stuff is, unfortunately, you have several places I can drive from just a little ways of my house and go through relatively new subdivisions that have carports and, well, not carports, but the garages right on the front of the house, and if somebody leaves their door open, you see all their mess and stuff in it, and it's just kind of tacky because half of what you see is a garage door. And so I think that was what was trying to be avoided. If you're gonna do it and you're planning for that, let's do it right and make it, look nice in the subdivision. So I go along with what you were saying. I think that, I wanna see a nice product. I'd already pointed out the fact about the depth of the parking paths, make sure that it doesn't interfere where people won't have to walk around the car every time they come up. But otherwise, I feel fairly comfortable with, they're meeting the guidelines by what's shown there in the R6 requirements at the moment, and feel okay with it.
Okay. I kind of feel the same way. I think because this, to me, this project is a little unique in that it's going to offer housing to people that normally would not be available, and it just so happens that, I do agree with Mr. Jones. I think it perfectly fits the area right there. And so I can forego the garage on this account. The thing that I want to call to attention to all the commissioners up here is, it's something to think about, is what happens the next time that a developer comes up and he's found a much nicer area and a piece of property, and he's wanting to maximize the lots, and he turns around and points at us and says, well, you did it over there on Rehoboth Road, why am I different? So I think we need to be very careful when we go away from the norm and grant variances on things. That being said, I think this stands on its own feet in the merits it has as far as offering housing to people that perhaps wouldn't have a chance to get a house, and in a very nice situation.
If I can segue on what you just said, and I was thinking about, the precedent is always in the back of my head on these things. And if we are going to approve that variance from what the ordinance reads, I think we need to see if the county zoning attorney can craft an extenuating circumstance that would justify us having done this and thwart exactly what you're talking about. And somebody coming in and say, well, you did it for Dr. Remington, blah, blah, blah.
Frank, that's not my place. That's yours.
Okay? Maybe staff can help on that. I think we need to avoid that precedent setting, and if we don't make some effort to do it, we're not doing our job.
Does that, could we make it as part of our motion that it is not to set a precedent? That the approval of this, that we recommend that the board use some kind of language that would not set, that would prohibit it being set as a precedent?
Ms. Upshaw, if y'all find that the criteria are met for the approval of a variance, you have by definition made a determination that is unique to this parcel and this development. Now, does that prevent someone in the future from coming back and doing exactly what John said they would do? Well, you did it for Harvey on Rehoboth Road. Okay. That's not one of the criteria in the variance, the provision of the ordinance, which governs the criteria for variances.
I understood it.
All right, do we have any other discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion. If you're making a motion in favor of the variance, I think item number 2 certainly should include Mary Louise's idea about the parking, and have that as one of the conditions of the variance.
David's staff report includes conditions. You might want to listen.
I am looking at it, I'm on page 43. It is not there.
It was just one condition, and that's pretty much the reiteration from the rezoning one about
Oh, wait, I'm.
the architectural standards being met for R6.
Okay.
what sort of language would you be comfortable with us putting on there, say, that for this particular project, trying to force the possible issues to keep us from having to wrestle with it in the future?
Well, all I'll say is if you go back to the rezoning notes, when I examined the site, I did make a reference to it, being relatively narrow. Also, there is a factor on there that you could certainly consider of, while the site is 26.32 acres, the total developed area is 12.88. You have an entire roughly 7 some odd acres over there on the eastern part, which is composed of a gas line easement and some floodplain. So while it is 26 acres, it is fairly constricted in terms of some realities on the property. So if you'd like to use that information.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Frank, I didn't mean to be curt. I didn't mean to be short-fused with that, but you have David as a planning professional that can assess the criteria in the ordinance governing variances. And then you are free to accept or reject those. And like I say, each variance stands on its own. My purpose is basically to look at what David has recommended or what you do to determine if it constitutes some type of legal error.
Well, I certainly did mention to David's,
You didn't. I didn't want to, I was concerned I might have sounded a little rude or curt about it, but that wasn't intended.
in there, done that.
And I understood what you said.
You're gonna help us on that, Dave?
I mean, like I said, there are certain, I would hesitate to call it a unique site, but there are certain physical factors that prevent the entire thing from being developed as fully as some other property where you have to consider space issues with garages and alleyways and things of that nature.
Okay, if there's no other discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we approve the variance to omit the garages and the standards thereto, and to add to the staff's recommendation as well, but to add a condition that the parking will be not inhibiting the sidewalk or not block the sidewalk in any way.
Okay. Don't add any other language, we're gonna let it go.
That's good to me.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Those opposed? Cool. Okay. All right, item number 3.
All right, we have a same property, another variance request going hand in hand with this, and this has to do with setbacks. In R6 zoning, we have the following standard in section 1106A. Minimum front yard depth setback from county arterial and collector rights-of-way, in this case Rehoboth Road, for all buildings and structures shall be a minimum of 100 feet. So we have that standard before us. Naturally, this fronts Rehoboth roads. That would affect most of the lots fronting Rehoboth Road. There again, as with the garage requirement, there are certain ways you can read this, and certainly of houses where part of a development that was, the houses were actually facing Rehoboth Road, that would certainly be one thing. However, we all see from the site plan here, this is a multifamily thing. First of all, you don't typically have that depth of a deep of a front yard, or any yard for that matter. It's that deep normally. You also have it facing a new interior street. So really, the presiding street would be the new interior street. The housing units all face that interior street, so technically their front yard is facing this new interior street if approved. So really, their back is facing to Rehoboth Road. So based on that interpretation, technically you should ask for the variance, yes, but based on that interpretation, you would not have a front yard, 100-foot setback off that right-of-way line coming into these lots. They are planning to accommodate a 40-foot setback off of Rehoboth Road from the right-of-way line to the back of the unit, is the plan, if approved.
Okay. Any comment from up front here?
I don't think that's gonna happen.
Is there any mention or any recommendation as to how high the fence needs to be, or how tall the fence needs to be, or whether it needs to be of certain density or materials, or is there any kind of comments about the offering of the applicant or the staff recommendations? I don't find, I'm sorry, I see a one-pager there that's before us.
Right. There is, not to my knowledge, any specifications for the fence, but you could certainly add conditions to it, in terms of height or material or screening purposes. I think they're intending to do probably a opaque fence with landscaping in front, I would imagine, but you could certainly make that part of your conditions.
Mr. Chairman, could we hear from the applicant as to his
Sure, let's have him
intent?
come back up.
This is an issue that we've studied, and we really are confused. You know, like he was stating, that it is facing an interior road, and this will be the backyard, which you have pictures of the fence there with the backyard on there. I hope you have it, but, you know, I'm reading with this development, P right here, and it says with water and sewer, we think that it's 50 foot in the rear, and we asking, or even 35 foot. So there's some confusion about, you know, with us, and then maybe David could clarify that for us. So we may not even need the variance, but, you know, we decided to go ahead and apply for it and discuss it here tonight to make sure what we needed.
Mr. Pilkington, would you be amenable to perhaps putting a really nice chain link fence and putting additional plants instead of going with a board type?
And I did hear the concern about that, but we really think that if we put the treated wood and put a cap on it and landscape in front of it and build it out of treated wood with 6 foot height, that's gonna look nice. And we're gonna stain it good. Actually, they just built one right behind Chick-fil-A here in Griffin, and they stained it, and it looks really nice. But yes, we would consider that. We think that'd be a cheaper product than what we wanna do.
I think over time, though, it would be, especially if you landscape in front of it and everything, you would have something that didn't look bad quickly.
Okay, we would consider that, but, and I hate to keep going back to it, but the homeowners association, keeping this place well-maintained, the fence would be part of their responsibility too, and the landscape.
Would that be ground up to 6 feet?
Yes, ma'am.
No gap from
Yes,
the
ma'am.
ground underneath,
Yeah,
so that puppies don't run out in the yard, run out in the road?
yes.
Once they dig.
Well, yeah. I don't know how you would keep them from digging, but that is another element of being along the back of a yard, because that's going to be where children play and where animals roam. Let's call them pets. Pets will roam. And they do deteriorate over time.
They do. I
with,
understand that concern, but
specifications in the
we think that
homeowners.
if it's sustained and well-maintained and the boards replaced as they deteriorate and keep it maintained, I think it's a architecturally landscape better product. But, you know, if you don't like that, we obviously discuss a chain link fence. Is that what you were saying, Mr. Yeoman?
I just think over time,
I do understand. Mhm.
and sadly, Mr. Covington, we don't know what quality of homeowners association you're gonna have. It could be great, it could not be great. The thing that I was most opposed to about the change in the setback was most of the properties that I went to look at that you've been associated with, like Summerwood, they're on a speed limited situation. Their cars aren't supposed to be going over 35 or 40. I think going down Rehoboth Road, you're gonna find people are busting the road open going down through there. I wondered about the sound issue.
Well, the fence and landscape would help with that, but as he stated, the 40-foot would be from the right-of-way, so from the right-of-way to the pavement is still another 50-foot, 40-foot, I'm not sure, but a good distance. So then you would have our 40-foot in addition to that. That's the right-of-way. So as far as traffic going down, you still got some other buffer there, distance.
But you're not gonna be right on the right of way with your landscaping and fence. You'll be set
No,
back
on the
beyond
on the
that.
property line. Mhm.
The right of way is the property line.
Yeah.
If you do that right along there, then your landscaping would be on the shoulder, which would be
No,
belonging.
it'll be on the
So you're going
the
back
development
behind
property,
that
yes.
right of way line, so
Mhm.
your limits will be from the right of way back, and the fence will be set back
Yes,
some distance from that line,
yes.
which is how we normally measure what should be required in this instance, 100 feet, but if we recommend to the board that they grant you variance, it will only be 40 feet. And you're saying that's,
Be 40 foot from the property line to the house is what we requested,
and in that 40 feet, you would have the fence and the landscape.
yes.
Any other discussion? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I so move.
Okay,
conditions on this?
Yes, sir, we do. Standard condition from, actually two. First one was the same, meeting the architectural requirements as the other ones. Then the other condition was no lot shall have access to Rehoboth Road. Obviously, we know they're not, but I'm just putting in that in there as a safeguard, so.
okay, so I have a motion to approve with conditions. Have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Those opposed?
Was that vote 4-1 or 3-2?
4-1. Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you. Next item on the agenda is a proposed text amendment to the Spalding County Code, Appendix 4, zoning Article 2, Section 202, general definitions pertaining to data centers. I guess Newton's on deck.
No, this is David's.
It's David.
Yes. So while we do not have any specific applications right now for data centers, we wanted to, in case we might in the future, just start to have an intelligent conversation about what that would look like and what standards we could use to control the development of these in terms of density, buffers, things of that nature. So first step, as always, and this is item 4 only, is to provide some general definitions. And we have 2 definitions, one of which the use we're going to try to exclude in the code, the Bitcoin mining, and then the data center we would have in a certain zoning district as a possible special exception application. So I have in there section 202 of the general definitions of the zoning code itself, 2 definitions, one for Bitcoin mining and then one for a data center. So that is all we're considering on item 4 there. And again, this is just starting our conversation on this. There may be revisions or additions to it, but I think we really need to address this in the code now rather than later and come up with some good standards and guidelines in case this does occur in the future.
If I could add one thing. Before David arrived, Sylvia was confronted with proposals for Bitcoin mining. And Bitcoin mining and the facilities that are required for that are very different from a data center. And particularly where the proposed use was for the Bitcoin mining was not appropriate. So what David has done is draft an ordinance that says we welcome the data centers, we have problems with Bitcoin, and here are the criteria for it.
I don't know if y'all want to take item 4 and 5 and talk about them at the same time, or it's up to you.
Let's go ahead and talk about 5 too.
Okay?
Could I, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
could I just ask a question? Pardon my age and my ignorance. What is Bitcoin mining? What happens in a facility
It is
that?
a computer-based, telecommunications-based system by which people swap and sell and trade cryptocurrencies, whatever that may be, and whatever value someone may place on it. They are not attractive facilities. There is one outside of Washington, Georgia. They look almost like mini warehouses for computers. And thus far, there have, from having had some experience over there with talking about it with residents, there are issues with noise and issues with the appearance. A data center is going to be located. A data center is what you need for your broadband connection, and it is being prompted by the transition to AI. It requires space. They are electric power hogs, and depending upon some of them, how some of them play out, they are also huge water users. But as a general rule, the data center is located in what would appear to be an industrial building. And it is a typical type facility, usually operated and constructed in an office park. I can tell you that Griffin has been approached and Spalding County have been both approached for Bitcoin mining. And issues related to Bitcoin mining fell apart because of the electric demand. But the same electricity issues apply to data centers.
Are you saying that the electrical grid can't handle those?
Mr. Allen, Georgia Power has had to come forward and ask for authority to generate 21,000 more megawatts in order to serve data centers under which they have contracts. To put that in perspective, that is 60% of Georgia Power's existing electric demand load.
Okay, any discussion on 4 and 5? We need to vote on these separately.
You do?
Okay. All right, on the general definition, number 4. I'll entertain a motion on that.
Motion to approve, sir.
Okay. Have a second? I'll second. Those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Those opposed? Those abstaining? Okay. 4-0.
Yes.
Okay, number 5.
So I have several, and then there again, this is just first initial try at it. This is not necessarily the Bible and data centers in Spalding County, but some certain standards there, minimum standards we could certainly entertain. I've since thought of a couple of more possibly to consider as well. But based on the approved definition you just approved, they would be allowed as a special exception only in C1C zoning, which is a manufacturing zoning. So we're only talking one certain zoning district in the county, not just any old place. Meeting the following development standards, and again, these are the initial stab at it here. Shall not be located within a half-mile of another data center property. I've since thought of a better way of talking about that, but I'll talk about that in a minute. Should not be located in any sensitive land protection districts. Shall meet all relevant development standards of any overlay districts that may be located in, including any airport overlays. There might be some considerations with electronics and airplanes I'm not familiar with yet. Exterior walls facing roads, residential properties should not be all metal, should consist of 40% stone or masonry facades. Night sky friendly lighting. Mechanical equipment fully screened. Rooftop equipment screened with parapets. Minimum building or structure setback for any property line adjacent to residential property shall be at least 50 feet. Talks about buffers for the power transfer stations or generators out there on the side. Then what I was thinking of further was possibly being only located on collector or arterial roads, or I like Newton's even better, only located in an office park. That would certainly regulate the density right there and making a more appropriate setting for it. And then getting some kind of capacity letter for the water usage from, to start out the applications with, so. These are all certain guidelines to consider, as minimum guidelines.
Okay. Any other discussion? Yes, ma'am.
On these data stations, are we talking a lot of electronic energy?
Yeah, there'd be a considerable electric usage, yes, sir.
Would you not want to have metal, like a Faraday cage around that facility?
You could definitely on the interior, but I'm just talking about,
The facade?
exterior aesthetics from the street, yes,
All right.
yeah.
The average data center load, electric load, Mr. Allen, is up to a gigawatt.
That's what I was thinking, it was gonna be very high.
And to put that in perspective, a super Walmart is 700 kW.
This is not, certainly not something you would obviously have, you know, that whole half-mile thing I just stated in the first one is probably dead on arrival anyway. It's not something you would have frequently, but I think you could make a case for perhaps having a few in the county, but the electricity, water demand is considerable.
The water demand on them can vary. Some are not water hogs. All of them are electric hogs. And let me make a disclosure to you. We represent a data center at the PSC. So,
Any other discussion? I'll entertain a motion.
Can I just ask a question first?
Sure.
Since we don't have a motion on. So, David, I was trying to look back, kind of what we're looking at for setbacks and stuff with C1C. And again, we're talking about something that there's a lot of power, a lot of potential other concerns. I know we've dealt with on several occasions, it's kind of dropped off a little bit now, but we used to have a lot of things that came up with power line emissions and different issues and problems, occurring out there. Do we really think 50 feet from residential property, is that gonna be, again, hopefully it's a little bit bigger property out there where this might be, but.
There again, that
50
was just
feet,
a,
decent.
that was just an absolute minimum. You could certainly, as you do with any of these rezonings or whatever that come in, establish higher criteria. But I was just trying to establish a baseline minimum.
2 miles.
All right.
You know, there again, it depends on, a residential property could be a 30-acre AR1 piece of one house, or you could have a subdivision. It would just all
Right.
depend.
So that's what I was thinking, so it's kind of relative, so to speak, but, I mean, again, if we're just putting a number out there, and if you're looking at some of the setbacks there with, with depths and stuff, I just.
Yeah, I was
don't know.
careful to say minimum on that one.
Yeah, okay. All right, well, we'll go with that for
All right.
time being.
I'll entertain a motion. Number 5.
Well, just for clarification, are you going with every A through H, I said? Because I'd really like to change A to only located within an office park,
Okay, let's do that.
all right, how about a planned development?
plan development.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get the changes made.
And then adding a requirement for capacity letters for utilities.
And you mentioned a collector or,
I think we can solve that with having it in the plan development. If it's within the plan development, that shouldn't be a factor.
should we say planned commercial development?
Yes.
Yes.
Planned commercial or industrial development. Because they are defined differently in the definitions.
So item A would be shall be only located within a planned commercial or industrial development. The rest of them will not change, and then item I would be, capacity letters required for utilities.
When you go back home, Google Palmetto Microsoft Data Center, and that will tell you exactly what local governments face, particularly smaller local governments, dealing with a data center.
All right. Anything else, Dave?
That's all I had.
All right, Jeff, you ready?
Okay.
All right, so I will recommend approval with the amended conditions that were discussed and noted.
I'll second that.
Have a second?
Bruce, amended conditions or text?
Those in-
Amended conditions or text?
Text amendments.
Text.
Text.
Okay.
Okay, have a motion, it's been seconded. Those in favor signify by raising the right hand. Okay, it's unanimous.
Who seconded?
Myself, Sean.
All right.
All right, thank you for that.
All right, let's move on to getting everybody buried. Proposed text amendment to the Spalding County Code of Ordinances, new appendix N, abandoned cemetery and burial ground protection ordinance. David?
So when I came in 5 weeks ago, we were on the tail end of resolving one of these in a rural subdivision off of, I forget what the name of the road is now, but anyway, it doesn't matter. Hardy Road. And there are certain state standards for protecting cemeteries, but as Susan over there will attest, we got to talking with them, and the state appears to be really only getting involved for protection if they're like over 10 acres or less. Now, obviously, in Spalding, Pike, and other more rural counties, there's a lot of very small family cemeteries, things of that nature, which don't come close to 10 acres. So it's kind of a wake-up call for me, because we're going to be dealing with these all the time, the further we get more developed into the county. And I think regardless of size, that these remains should be respected and protected, and there should be a clear-cut process building upon what the state code says, but making it more stringent for the county and setting certain processes in here that you know to automatically follow in case of whether it's protecting a cemetery around, it would be near development, or in a very rare case where you would have to actually relocate a grave or disinter somebody. There's certain processes I think that need to be clarified, spelled out, of course, based on state code, but going a little bit further, and so we can have a good guideline from this point forward when these things are bound to come up again. So I think this is, I actually stole this from a guy named David Allen in Pike County, so I was
There's a lot of Pike County references in it.
reworded,
Yeah, it's
Based
just
on-
Pike County through the
You
whole
still
thing.
got some references
I
to
think
Oh,
we
I
got the
do?
wrong
Yes,
version, maybe.
several.
okay.
I thought we were gonna bury everybody in Pike County.
I thought I got all
We're gonna
this.
act on them.
I apologize for that. I thought I went over it with a fine-tooth comb. Huh, okay.
We might need to get those corrected.
Yeah.
That's pretty comprehensive.
We can cover that in the motion.
I don't want to interfere with David's work, but if y'all have not had time to review this, there's no urgency.
No. We don't have another pending case right now, but just like with the data centers, I think it's something we need to start thinking about forward, so.
However, abandoned cemeteries are not electricity hogs.
That is true.
Or water. Well,
Mr. Chair, you could table this until it's cleaned
yeah,
up.
Okay, I was
I
reading.
like that
Okay.
idea.
All right,
Let's just make a motion to table this.
I'll make a motion to table till we get the wording corrected. I think as a minimum, we do need to change out all the Pikes to Spalding, but I am very much in favor of this. I unfortunately know of a situation right down the road from where I grew up where a developer recently moved in and has just decided that they just go right over an old cemetery and not think a thing about it, you know, and I think that's ridiculous. So
It's sad, it is.
Well, under state law, they're not supposed to develop until they've complied with the state statute. Now, the problem is catching it before it occurs. And what David's doing in his draft ordinance is tying that to the Spalding County Code and enhancing the requirements.
Right.
It would also provide for provision, and this, of course, will take some time, but to have basically a cemetery map. When these types of developments come into play, there's this cemetery to deal with, and we make that part of our pre-application discussion.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's great.
So we have a motion to table to get a second.
I so move.
Okay. Those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Okay, item number 7, go back to the agenda.
yes, sir, this is the preliminary plat reconsideration for Camus Landing on Teeman Road. However, per the email you received this afternoon from Susan, they have decided not to move forward on this development, have no plans to attend the meeting, so this should be struck from the agenda tonight.
He's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that not accurate, what Ms. Smith said?
I'm not sure who's called in.
Chantel Smith?
I'm not familiar with that person.
Okay. So based on, this is the email she sent, I was not aware y'all did not have this. Greetings, David, thanks for sending this notification about the planning meeting set for today at 6 p.m. My proposed buyer, developer, and builder have decided to not move forward on this development, have no plans to attend this meeting on this notion to note. I guess that's just from the real estate side of it?
That's
okay.
somebody that was a potential buyer.
All right, sorry for the misunderstanding there.
Okay, could you go ahead and state your name and address for the record?
Gadsden Woodall, 4172 Jodico Road, Stockbridge, Georgia, 30281.
All right. Okay, could you kind of refresh our mind here about this? I know this went back and forth, largely dealing with the, how it was gonna be sewered and so forth. Could you,
We're still working on trying to get a sewer connection from Pulte across the street, directly across from our property. If we get that connection made, then
everything's going?
everything's a lot better than it is today, with the 19 lots that we got approved on the preliminary plat. We just didn't want to go to full engineering without knowing that that was a complete impossibility. Once we know that we can't connect to the sewer, then we'll move forward with the 19 lots.
David, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Are you with SLB Construction?
Quintarius Burns, he's the owner.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Burns was here before when it was approved, according to the notes I have. I just want to make certain we're talking to the right people still, all right? Who is this Ms. Smith who called in and said,
Don't know.
all right, so Mr. Woodall, you are under contract to buy this property from Mr. Burns?
No, sir. Mr. Burns and I own it jointly.
You own it jointly, so you were a joint owner with him back in, hang on, 2022, when the subdivision was approved?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Because I will tell you, I got that email was copied to me as well, and I found it
That's
odd.
the first I've heard of it, yeah.
So we do not know who Ms. Smith is. Is it Chantel Smith?
Yes. But new to you properties?
I'm not familiar with them at all.
Okay. But y'all still own the property. Y'all have the necessary ownership interest to be able to come in and propose a development.
Yes,
All right.
sir.
So, that's fine. I'm gonna need to get y'all's contact information because I did, for this board have some concerns about some things which may possibly affect your layout and lot yield. This was reviewed by, obviously in 2022, by a previous zoning director.
I think you're my fourth or fifth zoning director, since I started this thing.
Hopefully last.
I hope so.
All right, but there are some things which we do need to go over, I don't know if tonight or later on, but that are going to possibly affect, again, the layout and the lot yield. First and foremost, I had on there the sanitary sewer not being available.
We have not closed that door yet. We are in
Okay.
discussion with Pulte.
All right, so if it winds up being the individual septic systems, you could not go to the 1 acre. I don't think you'd have enough room for the septic plus the house on that. We'd have to check with the health department on that.
Usually, I mean, I've done multiple developments on half acre with septic systems, but
Okay.
I did a conservation subdivision here recently in Fayette on 1 acre lots, no issues at all. Never had an issue in 1 acre, and I've done developments for 30 years.
Okay. Another thing was, and this is on the plat, it's actually, even though it's in Spalding County, it's affected by the Henry County Upper Toalaga Reservoir. There are
We're
certain
aware of that. and
water
they-
quality critical lines and buffers and things like that on there, which you're aware of. Those dash setbacks are on there.
They are.
But I had a concern about, when I was reviewing this several weeks ago, about there's a minimum lot width of 175 feet required for septic lots in water quality critical area. There again, we don't, not confirmed about the septic yet. This is obviously the minimum width you need to place, where you need to place the front of the house before you can get to that line, you can place it behind that line. Based on that, lots 10, 11, 14, and 17 may not possibly be buildable, I don't know, based on what I was seeing. So I'm not confident, 100% confident at this point that some of these lots are gonna be buildable, and I think we need to take a look at that. So that was some of the concerns I had. Now, we're here tonight to basically discuss the preliminary plat extension, so that's the,
That's right.
Overall
That's all we're asking
issue.
is some additional time.
right.
We've hired Paragon to do a new site plan for us, and we don't want to put that before the planning commission or the board of commissioners until we're certain exactly what we want to do. But
Okay.
they've already done a new layout since the Metro Engineering did that one.
Oh, okay. Okay. So based on this tonight, it's kind of a moot point
We'll just table it.
for this meeting, yes, sir. And-
We would just like to
If
get an
this
extension
preliminary
of-
plat's gonna be replaced, there's
Yeah.
nothing to table.
Right, we just want to get an
Correct.
extension of time to prepare our engineering, whether it's for the 19 lots or might be a sewer plan, and it would be a brand-new plan that would come before you
Okay.
all as well as the Board of Commissioners for approval. So
The-
it would
I
kind of
would-
start the process over.
Mr. Waldall, I would ask, without, we haven't had time to talk, but I think the better way to handle this would be the withdrawal of this preliminary plat and your resubmission of a new plat when it is finished.
I don't think we want to pull it at this point. Without the sewer commitment letter, we don't want to stop that process, because if we don't get the sewer, then we'll move forward with the 19 lots.
Okay. And sewer would come from
Pulte, directly across the street.
Community Services.
Well, it's not them. We have to go through 2 of the Pulte lots to get to community service. They've already agreed to give us the sewer capacity. It's just Pulte's got to give us the easement between 2 lots to get the sewer in.
Then this is not ready.
We just didn't want to have our plat, preliminary plat squashed. That was the only thing that we were worried
Okay.
about.
I apologize about the confusion with the.
Yeah, that's what we're here for, is to
Okay.
make sure that we're still moving forward. We just don't know whether it's with or without sewer.
I mean,
I think you and I probably need to
yeah.
conference upstairs, at, you know, a
Right.
date that's good with you.
So in terms of this board tonight, it's pretty much, you know, maybe you want to call it a,
Extension of the time needed to do their engineering and submit for the permitting, because that's the next step with us. We would submit for permits for the 19 lots. If it's sewer, then it would change completely.
Will 30 days impact this decision?
No, they've got the request in, and I assume you made the request to extend because the initial 2 years was being,
I don't know who made the request. I didn't. Okay. Well, I guess he thought we were at a deadline to have this preliminary plat permitted so that we could start construction. I don't know. But it's been 2 years. It's been since 2022. When we got approved, it was December of 2022.
now Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the first requested of an extension is done administratively?
correct.
But this is, I think, how many extensions are you on now? 8?
No, we've never extended.
I'm showing the preliminary plat being approved or on an agenda on August 30th of 2022, which would mean the 2 years was running, which would mean you would have had to have the application in before August of 2024, which I assume it was, correct, Susan? So you've protected your right to that plat. But you haven't necessarily, you will not have protected it if you submit a new one. And I would recommend that we table that you table this and this comes back. Their rights are preserved, but with David's review, it sounds like there are issues with it, and I think that's the better way to handle it.
I think David's right. We need to get
Yeah.
get this thing figured out, exactly what we need to actually build, because at the end of the day, we don't want to build something that we can't actually put a house on.
Yeah, we just need to make double sure of some stuff.
Can I ask one more question? Susan, have you received any correspondence before this afternoon from Chantel
I
Smith?
don't know where that came from. It came through just like you saw it. But there was another person that has been involved in this in other emails prior to me taking it over. So I need to go back to those.
And these were handled by Eva before
Yes,
she?
I'll have to go back to those emails to see to follow the trail.
Okay, we'll go ahead and table it. I'll take a motion for tabling the Camus Landing.
Motion to table, sir.
Have a second?
Second.
Seconded. All in favor, signify by raising your right hand. It's unanimous. All right, it's tabled.
Thank you all.
All right,
I'll be
we'll
in
get
touch.
together.
Yeah, we'll get together.
Wow. That's bizarre.
Okay. All right, Bruce, you're on deck, man. Need to consider the minutes for the August 27th, 24 meeting. We're gonna consider them twice, in fact.
Yeah, that was a typo on my part with getting used to the computer program.
I'm gonna make a motion to approve.
All right,
I'll second that.
all right, those in favor signify by raising your right hand. Unanimous. All right. How about the report of the director?
I don't have anything further tonight, Mr. Chairman.
All right, any commissioners got a gripe? All right. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment. So moved.
That was strange.
Thank you.
Ooh, my.